Okay, in this video we're going to make a form, all right? So a form's going to be like a web page where users can enter information and you can store that information. Now, when we're using a form, we want to be able to save that information and put it somewhere. So for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to save that into a text file, okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to brackets and I'm going to say File New. Exactly the same as we would do if we were writing an HTML page. Except this time we're going to be making a PHP page. So PHP is a different little extension that you put on the end of your file. Instead of doing HTML, we're doing PHP. Now we do that because there's some functionality to this page. It's not just a page that displays things. This page actually does things, right? So because we're doing things, we're going to save it as PHP. So let's go File, Save As. I'm just going to save it to the desktop and I'm just going to call it form.php. So that's how I'm going to save it, just there and called form.php, and I'm going to hit save, and this is the start of my document, right? Form.php here. Now we're going to go through and actually write the PHP, because normally I would go through and show you the code, but in this situation this is kind of a unique one, so we're going to write the code. So we start off with brackets question mark PHP. So this is, we're saying this is like a little bit of code that we're going to do here. This is not just a normal web page that displays. Now we're going to say what happens is we're going to have on the screen a series of boxes. We're going to have maybe 4 or 5 boxes on the screen, and each box has its own special name. And when the user sees the page, they see the boxes and they enter information into those boxes. And that's called posting. They post information. They put information, they post it on the website. Now we need to have PHP that says, okay, go and use this method, this post method, and get that information. And let's store that information in variables. Similar to Python where we use variables, here we're going to store this information in variables. So we're going to have to, first of all, tell the computer or tell the website, we're going to use the method that's called post, and we're going to tell it how we're going to store the information. So this is the code for doing that, right? And it's a little bit complicated, but it's you know, you'll understand it once you get into it. Okay, so we're saying, oops, square brackets, option, there we go. We're saying if something happens on the server and they enter some information, we are going to get this information, we're going to request this information. Okay, so we're going to ask for the information from the server, and we are going to use the method that I just talked to you about that's called post. All right, so they're going to use the post method. So if there's something put onto the page, if there's a request made on the page, we're going to use the post method to find that information. Essentially, that's the simplified way to explain it. And this is how we write it, right? So this is saying use the method of the post, and this is what we're going to do. So the first box that we're going to create might be the first name, person's first name. Then we're going to say equals $ underscore post, and then we do square brackets, and we're going to put in here first name, and all of this will make sense the further as we go along. Okay, so I'll need to explain this line to you because I'm just going to copy and paste this line several times. We're going to create a variable called first name. We're going to go and find any information in a box that the user has, and we're going to call that box first name. So whatever the user types into this box called first name, we're going to save it into this variable called first name, right? So that makes sense. So let's copy that, Command C, hit return, Command V, Command V, Command V, Command V. That'll do, that's probably enough. So let's make this one, instead of first name, let's make this one surname. And we need to have the post type as surname. All right, and then the next one we're going to, let's change this to maybe birth year. And let's then change that to birth year. Oh, birth year, right. Let's do another one, and let's have maybe gender. These are normal things that you would find on a form that people would ask you. So I'm just doing like a stock standard form. And then maybe some sort of text, a message. Okay, so now what we've done is we've gone through and we've created a way for the PHP to go and find these 5 text boxes. So if the user's entered 5 bits of information, the PHP will go and find these 5 different pieces of information. Now we want to get all of that information. We want to put it into a new variable, all of it combined together, that we can store into a text file. So we might call all of this our data. So we're going to say get all of this data, and we're going to put in some information in here. We're going to say first name, colon, and then we're going to get the variable, right? So we're going to get the variable first name. Right, so this will say, okay, make a text file. This is essentially what we're going to do. Make a text file. It'll have the title first name, and then it'll have the name that the user actually put in for their first name, right? Then let's do surname, colon, and then we want to get the variable surname. Okay, and then we want to do the same for, let's copy and paste this so I don't have to keep typing it over and over again. Okay, space V, space V, space V, space V. All right, so first name, surname. The next one was birth year. So let's go here, birth year. And the variable that we're going to get is called birth year. Okay, the next one was gender. And the variable was called gender. And the last one was the message. And the variable was called message. Okay, so I'll go through and explain that just one more time pretty quickly, just so that you makes it a little bit clear. And then actually let's put in /n, which will go to the next line. Right, now let me explain what that does. This section of the screen at the top here goes and gets the individual pieces of information, 5 individual pieces of information. This variable here puts all those 5 bits of information all together into one variable called data. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a file, and we're going to put into it some contents. Okay, so I'm going to make a new file, and that file, we're going to call that file, it always does that, data.txt, which will be a data file. And in that, we're going to put the variable data. And we're going to have to save that file somehow. In fact, we're updating it, so we're going to say it's append, right? So we're updating or appending that file. Okay, now last thing we want to do is we want to print out that the data's been saved, all right? So let's print out on the screen. Oh, it always does that. It self-corrects with the inverted commas. Let's do a paragraph on the screen, and let's say data saved successfully. Exclamation mark, close my paragraph, /p, close paragraph, and then let's put a semicolon at the end. Right, so that section there is actually all of my PHP. Oh, and I've got to close my PHP. You know, I've opened it up here, like the tag at the top, so I need to close that as well. So let's just put question mark, close that. All right, so now I've closed my PHP. So this section here is the working part, the thinking part, I suppose, of the website. None of this you will see on the screen except when you've successfully saved the data and it says data saved successfully. Nothing else you'll see. So we have to do an HTML part of it as well, right? So there has to be things that the user sees on the screen, and then this is the things that work in the background to make your file saved and working and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to hit save there. I'm going to hit return, and then let's start doing some HTML, and this will be the bit that the user actually sees. So let's do that next. With a PHP file, you can have both HTML and PHP on the same file, but it's got to be called PHP so that the functionality works, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the HTML section here. Now this is the section that the user is going to see, all right? So this is the bit that comes up essentially on the web page that the user will see. And we start off with the sort of the standard way that we write a web page. We tell it that it's going to be the document type is going to be an HTML. Oops, docu-type is going to be HTML. And then we start our HTML, right? And the beautiful thing about brackets that I always say is it opens and closes our tags, right? So there's our first tag HTML. Let's do a head tag. Oops, I'm not typing very well today. Right, close our head tag, right? And we're going to put in a title in here. And we're going to call this one simple form. Simple form, there's our title. We're not going to put any styling in, I don't think. I just want to get to the main part of making your form here. Now I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so we can see it. All right, let's start with a body. Okay, now, again, as we've done with all of our web pages, the body is where you see things, right? So the body is where we're gonna show information to the user, and let's call this one simple information form. Okay, so there's my heading. It's an H2 heading, simple information form. Now, this is where we start to make the relationship between what you see on the screen with what happens up here with the PHP. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a form, right? So we're making a form down here. We're using a form tag, but we're going to tell it what method we're using with our form. And the method, remember I said right at the start, is post, right? So that's what we're going to be using. We're going to be using a method in here of post, P-O-S-T. So now the form knows when the user puts information in, post that information. And when it posts it, it's like a letter. It posts it from here up in here into this PHP section here. The PHP section saves it into this variable data, and then this data is used to make our text file. So it sort of all comes together of how this is going to work. Now, we don't want it to do any other actions. We just want it to do post. So it's not going to be click it and it changes websites or changes links or does anything like that. It's just going to post it. Now, let's put in what we want it to post. Label, start off with a label here, and our label's going to say first name, colon. So there's going to be a little section where it says first name, and then we have a break, a line break, and then we're going to put a box, like an input box. And the input box, we want it to be the type, we want it to be text, right? So the person can input text in there. And we want it to have the name. Now this is the important part here. The name of this field or this input box, we've got to remember is first name. So that section there has to be exactly the same as that section up there. This is how it knows where to get the information from. Because this one's called first name, and we're saying our input box down here is called first name. This is where it's going to get the first name from. And we're going to say it's required, which means the user has to put something in there. They can't leave it blank, right? Let's put in a couple of breaks. What am I doing? Break. Yep, and then let's do another one, maybe 2 lines. Break, right? So that's essentially our first box. We're going to have the title that says first name. We're going to have an input box that is expecting text, and it's going to be called first name, and it's required by the user. Now, let's do that 2 more times. Let's do that. Let's copy that. Hit paste, return, hit paste. Remember, this one's going to be our surname, so let's change this to surname. Surname. The file then down here has to be called surname. Okay, so that's our surname. Now let's do birth year. And let's change this one here. It was all one word. Birth year. Oops, I just said it was one word, then I made it 2. Birth year. Now, the next one we're going to do a little bit differently. The next one for gender, we're going to actually, let's paste it again. We're still going to use it in here, and we're still going to use the word gender. But maybe we'll make this one a little bit different. Instead of making this one type text, let's make this one type radio, which essentially is a button, right? It's going to give us a button to choose from. And this time, because we're giving them a choice, we have to tell it what the value could be. So the first of our buttons is going to be male, and it's required. And then the second one of our buttons, we're going to make our second button female, and we don't need to have the breaks in here. So let's delete these breaks here. Delete that, and this will make more sense once you actually see what I'm talking about, what a button is, right? what a radio button is, right? So this one's going to be female. And we don't need to put required in here, I don't think. Oh, and I better put in here that this is male, so that they can see that the word's going to say male, female. Okay, so and then let's put the two breaks in there. Break there. Okay, so what we've done here is we're creating a form. We've got our first input box, which is going to store the information in first name. Our second input box, which is going to store it in surname. Our third one, which is going to store it in birth year. And then our fourth one, which is going to be a button where you get to choose between male or female. That's going to be the way that works. They're the two choices that you're going to have. There are no other choices for the purpose of this exercise. Now we need to do one more box down here. And let's go and copy the birth one maybe. Copy that. Paste this here. And this one's going to be called our message. Okay, there's our message. In fact, let's not put the word message there. Let's put written text, right? So they can write some text there. But we know we're going to call it message. We need to remember that this goes in as our message variable. It's going to go in there. And let's give this one a few changes. Instead of making this an input box, let's make this a text area, so they can write lots of words if they need to write lots of words. So text area, we're going to have to close that text area here. So let's go /text area, right? So it's going to close that. Oh, it automatically did it, right? So it automatically closed the text area, good. Let's give it some size. Let's get rid of required. And let's say it's going to be 4 rows maybe. And maybe 30 columns. That means it'll be 30 characters across, and they can write 4 rows worth of stuff, right? So you're giving them a little bit of room to write some information. 30 characters across. Okay, so that's about it. So now we've got a text area there as well. We've got a couple of breaks after the end of that. Now, here's the thing. You've got all this information: first name, surname, birth name, gender, written text. How does the program know when the user is ready to send that information, to post that information? How do we know that? So we have to have some sort of an input, right? Now this input is going to be a button. And essentially the button is going to submit that information. Submit meaning send, right? And we're going to put value, and the value for this one is in fact submit. Okay, so then let's close that bracket. Right, so now what we're saying is, here's our method. Here's our form. It uses the method post. It's going to give the user the option to enter a first name, surname, birth name, gender, a written text, and then there's going to be a button down the bottom that they click submit. And when they click that submit, information goes up here and is stored in there. And then that information is stored in a big variable called data, which is then stored in a text file. So we should have that. Now that seems pretty long-winded, but using this process, you can now collect as much information as you like from a user whenever you want. This is a basic form. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to say File, Save my form. I'm going to actually close brackets. I'm going to quit out of brackets here. And now we want to run that page. Now this is a little bit different from running a normal HTML page where you would just double click it and you could preview the page. This is PHP, so it has to be running on a server. So I'm going to go to my MAMP, which is my virtual server. So MAMP is a program that runs like a virtual server and a virtual database. It's a virtual server, so I'm not buying real website space. I'm doing a pretend website on my virtual server. And to get this, you should be watching the tutorial creating a database on MAMP or setting up MAMP. It's on the database section of the website, right? So I've essentially downloaded MAMP, installed it, running MAMP, not MAMP Pro, just running MAMP. I click start on the button there, and then this web page comes up on the screen. Now when this web page comes up on the screen, you click on my web page, and we change this here from localhost to /form.php. Right, now that should bring up my simple form. And here it is. Here's my simple information form. Now it's got first name and a box, surname and a box, birth year, and I can type in a box. It's got these radio buttons where you choose male or female, and then it's got written text in here. Now, to make sure this works, there's a step that I kind of have missed over, which I shouldn't have missed. When you set up MAMP, MAMP needs you to put your form page in the right folder, all right? So if you go to your desktop of your computer, you go to Applications, you go to MAMP, where you've stored MAMP. There's a folder there called HT Docs inside MAMP. So I'll do that again. Applications, MAMP, HT Docs. And inside HT Docs, I put my form.php. I dragged it from the desktop and put into here, form.php. Now that will store my information right there in that folder. Now if I go to MAMP and I do what I did just then, I'll go back here and I'll show you again. I click My Website. I go to here and I put /form.php, and now that'll take me to my form. It'll take me to my local host, pretending to be the internet, to my form.php page, and I hit enter. And there it is. There's my form. Simple form information, simple form, that was the title, first name, surname, birth, gender, text. So let's test it, right? Now I've already tested this once, I'm going to test it again. This time let's put in the name, I don't know, John Star. Birth year, 1999. Male, I am a star. That'll do. Some sort of silly text in there, right? So this is the test. John Star, 1999, male, I am a star. Now, if this works and I hit submit, this should say information saved or successful or whatever that little line of code was. So let's try it. There it is, data saved successfully. So it's saved it and it's blanked my form. Now, what we did in our PHP file was save it to a data file. So if we go back here to the same folder, this htdocs folder, there it is, data.txt, there's our file. And if I double click that, it says, all right, how do you want to open it? It's a text file. I want to open it as a default text file in Word or in something like that, so in Word. So here it is. First name, John. Surname, Star. Birth year, 1999. Gender, male. I am a star. And this was my first one I did earlier in the day. I did a test. Nicholas May. Birth year, 10/10/72. Male. This is a test. So you can see it's saving that information into a text file. So that is how you make a form in PHP for a website using PHP in brackets. That's how you do it. Now, of course, this is not where it ends. You can style this. You can put in the middle of the page. You use your CSS. You can put in a box. You can change all these headings. You can change the different ways it's submitted. This is a basic form for you to use as a starting point for your web page.